If you have watched any of my videos for any length of time, you already know how I like to recycle things and how I like to save paper, save supplies, reuse things, repurpose things. Well, have you ever gotten a gift, a body gift set in a nice little box that has a magnetic closure on it? Well, you can cover those boxes with your scrapbook papers and you can make it into a gift box. Now this was a blue and green, and I'm sorry, I didn't think about recording it when I was doing it. I took 2 sheets of 12 by 12 scrapbook paper. Here's the paper where it's this color on one side, that color on the other. And the other sheet was this paper here, which is that on the other side. And I also had a little bit of this paper left over, so I used 2 12 by 12 sheets plus leftover of this print, and all the colors coordinate well together. I covered the back side with this paper, and then I used what I had a little bit left. I used it to cover here and here. I glued this sheet on top and I centered this design so that it was in the middle here, or it's pretty close to the middle. And I used this paper for this to hide all the words. And the box has, metal right here, and it has a magnet, so it closes really good. So don't throw away those boxes. I used scrapbook paper because that paper is relatively thin. I didn't want to use thick, heavy paper because then it would make it really hard. It's important to clip your corners when you're doing this. But that's a great way to recycle a box and to make a gift box for a gift. And I'm planning on using gold ribbon to wrap it up. And the box can be reused to store whatever things in, or it could be re-gifted and they could give it to somebody else. The person who is receiving this gift, I had made a card using my men's origami, and that's the same paper that this was made out of. And so I'm using the leftover piece here, and then I kind of finished it off on this box here. So that's all I've got left of that piece. And it coordinates very beautifully with this box. So there's a great gift giving idea that doesn't cost very much. Just use the paper that you have and pull it together. Recycle, don't throw things away. If you want to know how to fold the paper into men's shirts, I have a video on my playlist, card making tutorial, and I think it's origami men's shirts for cards. I think it might be the name of it. And so they make a simple masculine card for somebody. That's all I've got of this. So I guess I'm just going to use this one piece, but that'll work. It'll work. I'll just tie it in a good knot here. And I think I'll grab my scissors. We'll just snip this to strips. Roll them. And then we slip the card in here, and we have a gift in a package. I don't have to wrap it because it's already wrapped. It already makes a nice pretty package. My channel is full of a lot of money saving ideas. Where I just made a bunch of scraps with this project. So I'm going to take these papers and I'm going to create some cards so that I can use up, since all the colors coordinate well, I'm going to use these up to make a card because I don't want to have leftovers. I have been on a 2-year quest not to add to my scrap pile, and I don't want to begin now. So these have to be turned into cards so that I have no scraps left over. I'm using up my scraps, trying to make some cards, and I use my typical strip method, which I have several videos using this. It's a great way to use up scraps. I did have to pull in one extra paper. I had a small scrap, which really was only about this size, and I cut it up so that I could just put a little bit of a light color in there. And I was able to make 2 strip cards. This one, I cut it one size smaller than the card base so that I have a white frame around it. This one, I cut it the exact size, but I thought it would be nice to have a little cutout, and I've done cards like that. I used this from Waffle Flower, which has all these dies. I kind of keep these cut together. That's for that cutout right there. This has been a very valuable die cut that I got from Waffle Flower. My plan is to use this flower on this card, and I think it would be cool if it overlapped the frame. I will be coloring it. And with this one, I thought I would turn it this way and use the same flower and maybe add the leaves just to make it a little bigger. I might lower it to one side so I could put a sentiment there, not sure. But I will be hand coloring these flowers, and in the whole idea of using up recycled papers, this is a schedule from Vacation Bible School, and so I use that, typing paper. I recycle everything, and I like to use up all my scraps. Let's just glue those on, since I know that that's what I want for the card base. So I'm trying to use up these papers that I had used in a previous project, which I showed you at the beginning of this video. I don't want to leave any scraps, because my aim is not to add to the scrap pile, so I have to use up everything, and that's what I've been doing for 2 years now. So I'm trying not to cut up new paper. I did cut up new paper to wrap that gift. Again, scrap paper, recycled paper, this outside frame on first. And then I want to make sure that I put this in the correct way so it's continuous with the pattern that we have here. Center it so that this little frame is there. So we have these 2 card bases that are ready to be decorated. I want to show you what else I did. Again, in trying to use up the scraps, I had a little bit of paper left after doing the strip cards. And this is a little bit more narrow than that. This is the reverse side of that paper. So I just put it like that. And I decided that this frame would look really awesome there. And I've stamped this image that I got from Hobby Lobby. It's very elegant roses. I will color that with color pencil. I made sure that that would fit the frame that I have here. These frames, I got them from Amazon, but I love these nesting frames because sometimes I don't want a square or a rectangle. Sometimes I want an oval. And with that set, I have every oval size that I would want. So I made sure that I found one that will fit. This is just slightly bigger, so that'll be very easy to glue on there. I just see one little hole I missed. Let me knock that out. I'm just using a little quilting pin. I will color that before I glue that on. But that was another card that I made. And then getting down to slim pickings, I played around with this. I put 2 pieces of the paper. This paper that's the reverse side. I was looking at my flowers and I was thinking the colors are, I don't know, make me think of Old English. So I used Shaded Summer. I used this stamp right there. Then I wanted to decorate it a little bit further. I had some skinny strips, so I just put that there. I wanted to decorate it a little bit more, so I pulled out this stamp set. Also has the die cuts inside. So I used these cutouts. And I was having a difficult time choosing the colors. I had made this one and I made that one. I just wasn't happy. I thought that was getting lost and that was too bright. So I had some extra flowers and I added the leaves, which is using this die cut and that die cut and those leaves here. And I wanted the colors to be muted because these are not bright colors, these are muted colors, the papers. So I wanted to keeping with that feel of the cards. So I used Shaded Summer, those die cuts, and here I was still having trouble with contrast. So I needed to have one more thing, which came from this set, Framed Florets, which comes with that frame that I used on this other card. Now I do have this frame left over. I may or may not use it. So far that's 4 cards, and I think I can do one more. Flowers that I'm planning on using here is from Cottage Rose from Stampin' Up! And I also have the die cut that goes with it, so it cuts out that shape. There's more than some of these. Okay, this goes with that, but there's so many die cuts in here. I wanted to keep them separate. So I wrote on the bottom Cottage Rose, so that way I could know Cottage Rose, so that this goes with that. But I store them in different places. In the sets where I have included the dies, because all of these go with all of that, I put the die cuts in here, but sometimes when I put the die cuts away, I can't remember which one has the die cuts or where are they. But so I went through my stamps, and I put a green dot so that I can know at a glance that these stamps also have the die cuts included in this package. Showing you my desk. This is the scraps I have left over from this paper. There was that paper, and it was this paper here, and this paper here. This is what I have left. I might be able to make one more card. I had to pull out some of my scraps from my small scrap bin. You can see how these are all kind of squared off pieces to make some flowers. I think I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to use up this and that, making some more leaves since I have extra flowers. I'm going to need some leaves to go with it, so I might as well just finish off this paper scrap, and then I got to decide what to do with this stuff. I might actually make a couple more flowers because I don't want to save these pieces. I want to use them up. And it's okay if I have leftover flowers. I have a couple of containers where I keep extra leftovers that are kind of flowers that are colored or flowers that are made, and I have a box to keep my leaves. So I used up those little scraps, and sometimes I like to save these random little cutouts because you never know when you might need something of that shape or piece. So I have a jar full of little scraps. It'll be fun someday to pull some of these out and create something, maybe create a picture with all these tiny little cutouts, and then I don't have to cut things out by hand because they're already cut out. And so it looks like confetti. And I have this little cup right now. I'll switch it to a jar eventually. These little gold cutouts that could be useful sometime. And these are all my little gold pieces, sort of glitter. And this is my leaf container. So I will just put these leaves, the spare leaves, in here somewhere. They're different than these, but they're similar. And then I also keep fall color leaves. So we'll just put those, since they're small leaves, we'll put those right in there. So I have a collection of ready leaves whenever I need various shades of green and fall colors. That's how I deal with the scraps so that I don't have leftovers. So I did not use this piece, so I'm going to put that back in my scrap. Here is my scrap bin. That's it. That's all I have. This is only scraps I have. And I usually pick from here first when I want to make a little sentiment, or I want to make a little decoration, a little piece of art to decorate a card. I start here. And the colors are starting to dwindle because I've been using them quite a bit. Also, if I have any fairly good sized pieces left over, I will square it off and put them in here so that it's easy to keep. Well, this one is almost square. It's got a little bit taken off of it, but I typically cut them into squares, rectangles, or whatever. At my smallest pieces here, my biggest pieces there, the tallest pieces back here. And that's the only place where I keep scrap papers. These are all solid colors. Well, actually most of them. There's something that's got a print on it. Sometimes when I make a bunch of little things like this, I will put them in a little baggie. Like here's a collection of, here's a bag of butterflies that I cut out, played with stuff. So maybe I'll make a bag and put these flowers in it. I could just put these flowers in here. All right, now I'm down to this. All I have left. And so I want to see what can be done with the last bit of card pieces. So I'm going to play with the paper, piecing it. I'll go to my scrap paper and just pull out one of my quartered sheets from its various things. That's a vacation Bible school program. I always have to edit things, and then when I'm done I have extra paper, so I just cut them into quarters. If there's a blank side, I'll put it in a special box where I keep them as note cards. I made this box many years ago using wrapping paper, I think, to cover the box. And this is where I put my quartered sheets. If it has a blank one side, there's something on the other side blank, then this is, you always need a little note to make a shopping list. You gotta go to the store and you need to buy a few things. You're going into town, you need a few things, and you need to make a short little to-do list. That's what this is. So I'm constantly recycling. So that's the size paper that I use whenever. It's a quarter sheet, a quarter of a typing paper, and I will use it as a base for building up a card base. This is my process of making strip backgrounds for card bases when I want to use up scraps. The strip cards are one of my favorite ways to using up scraps. I have several videos where I use this method with different variations. I usually start with 1-inch strips. Then I work my way down to a 1/2-inch strips and then a 1/4-inch strips. Printed papers work fine for 1-inch strips, but solid colors are better a 1/2-inch or smaller. Sometimes I have also included quilling strips with my strip cards if I need to bring in another color. I'm not going to explain the process in this video because my other videos show and explain it fairly well. I find that diagonals work best for aesthetic purposes. When I change the angle, the strips go perpendicular from the previous ones. I think about light next to dark or dark next to light for good contrast. It doesn't work well to have two very similar colors side by side. I try to balance the different papers, repeating the papers in different locations or different angles for interest. And since there was so much burgundy here, I had added that extra white that has a little gold trim on it. 'Cause that just gave me just enough of a contrast that works well with these papers. square frame or an oval frame. And the same flower might look really nice on the corner like that. Okay, what do we do with this? We have this, we have that. We could do two separate cards. We could put it together. We could create a design out of it, maybe. I would show you how I color this flower. I want the flower to be pink, kind of like this. Now it could be peach, like this one, but I'm going to choose pink for this one. So I start with my lightest color, pink. This is red. I like to use two colors on the flower, two colors on the leaf, yellow for the center of the flower. I might need a touch of blue on the leaves to make them a little bit darker, and maybe some brown on the stems right here. So those are the colors that I'm using. I'm using Crayola pencils because I can get a nice point with them. Now I have to use a magnifying glass, so I hope this doesn't get in the way of me coloring for your view. All right, I start with my lightest color on the flower, and see these lines? See these lines? I'm going to color in the direction of those lines. In my first color, I'm putting it on with a really soft touch because I do not want to have deep, dark colors. I want very light, very soft, very subtle flowers. So I'm just rotating my paper and I'm following the direction of these lines that are already printed on the flower. That makes it easy. So even if you're not an artist, you can color the whole petal with a light color, or you can leave some of the areas where there are no dots or lines. You can leave a little bit of white, and that will be fine too. But these lines are very useful because they go in the direction that the coloring strokes should go. So I always rotate, so I'm working from the middle out to the outer edges of the petal. I'm using a fairly light touch. Oops, I skipped, whoops, I hit one dark place there. Skip this petal. This is the first layer of color. Now, for the second layer of color, see how very, very light, very, very pale that color is, because I don't want it too dark. Now, I'm going to go over it again with the same pencil. Only this time, in the very middle of the petal, I want to make it just a little bit darker. And when it's down in spaces where it's tucked behind, we definitely want to put a little extra color. And this is a folded over edge, so we want a little extra color right under there, because that folded over edge is going to create a shadow right here. This is a space in between, so we want to fill in that. So I'm just mainly focusing on the part that goes down inside the middle of the flower. So just to make it a little bit darker. And this petal's kind of tucked behind, so we want to add some darker right down in there, especially right where it's tucked behind. And go a little bit lighter there. Darker in the middle, a little bit lighter, darker down here, a little lighter touch towards the middle. Don't want to put too much color here. This is behind that one, so you could have just a little bit more color on that edge. And try not to go out too far with this. Since I made that one dark space, I want to add a little more color there. This is behind, so we'll put a little shadow there. Okay, right down here, down in this little tiny space. Shadows down in the deep spaces. This is behind that flower, so You want to make this edge a little bit darker. Tuck behind there. This one is tucked behind just a tiny, tiny bit. Shadows will always be behind. Where there's something, this petal is behind that, so this edge, just a little tiny bit of color. We don't need very much color. We put a little bit of shadow right there. That, by putting a shadow there, it makes this come forward. Okay. I do need to put yellow on my center flower, and I'm using kind of a bright yellow. It's just called yellow. It's a bright yellow. Alright, I'm not done with the flower. I want to do one more thing. I'm going to use red, but I'm going to use it very softly. So that's not very much red. It's just adding a little bit of strength to the pink. Go with a very light hand. I can be a little bit darker right down in little tiny little tight spaces, but I don't want to put too much color of this red on. This red is going to just enhance the pink. Really, the overall effect is it's just a little bit darker pink. Because what I'm doing with a light touch is I'm allowing the white of the paper to shine through, so that way, therefore the red interprets as pink and not red. If I colored heavy, it would come out too red. You can make the flower any color you want, but for my purpose and the background that it's going on, I want it to have a pink appearance. And I prefer color pencils to markers. Markers, you cannot get the intensity or the color you want. You get too strong of a color. And I want the colors to be soft. And flowers should have soft, gentle colors. Deep space here. Go a little bit lighter here. Just these edges that are tucked under is where they need to have a little bit more color. I could be darker there. And I go a little bit lighter touch. Let's see. I feel like this one doesn't have enough color. I want to go back and add just a little more pink. And this one's kind of light too. There. Okay, this one needs just a little bit more color. Okay, I think I'm happy with it. Almost. If the color's not dark enough, you can always go in and add just a tiny bit more color. But it's best to always start off with very light, a light hand. Not to add too much color at once. There, we have a very lovely pink color. Now I need to color the leaves, and I've chosen to use jade green. Jade green is kind of a dull green. It's not too bright, that's why I like it. And I'm not paying attention to the direction that I color in because I'm applying my color very smooth. My pencil's not super sharp. If it was super sharp, you'd be putting lines and then direction would matter. But since I'm just putting a base color, I just fill it in however, like a child would color and fill in color. This is just an undertone. I'm going to come back with a darker color and add some more dimension to these leaves. Right now, the leaves are looking flat, with just a flat color. Flat meaning it doesn't look two-dimensional. See, these petals look two-dimensional because there's varying shades from light to dark. But right now these leaves are I'm just adding a wash of color. is a term that's used, or a flat color. It looks very flat, one solid color. Now, here's where the dimension comes in. I come in with a regular green, and every place where I see these lines, I'm going to add a little color. Well, since this petal is tucked under that leaf, I want this whole edge to be a little darker, so I'm just going to darken this edge. So just follow these lines. So for this is almost the middle of the petal. I think the stems might be a little darker, so we'll go over that. Just follow these lines, and follow the lines in the direction. See, the lines go that way, so I color that way. It's kind of the center of the leaf. Leaves look better when they have varying shades of lights and darks. It just gives them a little bit more realism. That's tucked under this petal, so I want this corner to be a little darker. I want the stem to be darker. Just following these lines. This is a very nice stamp, a very nice print. Some stamps have too much black. I like the very thin lines that this stamp has. I think it's a very lovely stamp. Sometimes if you get too much black ink on the stamp, it just kind of ruins the stamp image. It makes it harder to color, but this one is pretty nicely done. Very well. It's by Stampin' Up. And what's it called? Cottage Rose? Cottage Rose. It's a very lovely stamp. I want this edge to be a little darker since it's under the flower. Okay, now just for a little bit more dimension, I'm going to come in with the blue and add a little darkness on our stem, and maybe just a little bit on some of the blue areas, like on one half of the leaf. The blue just makes some deeper shadows. Blue on green is going to make some darker shadows. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Now for these little flowers, you could make them any color. They could be yellow, but for my purposes, I want some more red. I'm just going to make them little red blossoms. I'm not coloring in any specific direction this time, just filling it in, because the stamped image is there, and you know what, if I get out of the lines a little bit, that's okay. It's still going to interpret well as a flower, a little tiny flower. I just want a little pop of red color that will help go with our background. And then I will use brown to just strengthen my stems. Okay, this flower is done. Actually, I'm going to put a little bit of brown on the edge of this, just to darken the edge just a little bit. Okay, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. And that is going to go right here. Simple, yet lovely. And there's still room to put a sentiment. I want to do something with this frame, so I'm thinking about this. And I think it'd be nice to add this little stamped image right here. So it's sort of an arrangement. Alright, the stamp image didn't come out so great, so I'm going to I want to enhance this image because I feel like my stamped image didn't really work out great. There, that's better. I felt there was too much white on this card, so I decided to use the same ink color that I had used on the stamped flower. I rolled on some soft color on the outer edges of the card. I'm using a sponge roller. I should have thought of this before I glued the frame on, but I didn't. Good thing I'm working with straight lines. Added a little more ink to the corners, darkening the corners a little bit. Added my die-cut flowers to create an arrangement, then finished it off with some jeweled dots. With the next card, learning from the previous card, I rolled on some ink before gluing on the frames. The frame will be oval, so I'm trying to avoid adding color beyond where the frame will be. I decided to add a gold glitter paper cutout inside the frame to bring out the little bits of gold that are already on the frame. Now I am cutting out a mask, an oval slightly larger than the oval space because I want to protect the inside center of the oval to keep it white and clean. Holding my mask in place, I stamped some flowers on each corner. That turned out nicely. I picked out the sentiment that I wanted in the middle, but to help me get it exactly where I want it, I pulled out my Stamparatus so I don't mess up the card with a misplaced stamp. I set the uninked stamp down exactly where I want it. Then I bring the cover down to pick up the stamp. With my card positioned properly, I ink the sentiment and bring it down. Perfect placement. Now I can glue on my frames. Perfect. So these are the cards that I made with the leftover scraps. These, let me put that up here. These two are similar. This flower is peach, this flower is pink, and this one, and this one. And then with the little cutouts right here, I made these cards. So these are the cards that were created using all the leftovers, so I don't have anything to add to my scrap pile. So these cards were made with the scraps left over after I had finished this project here. See, this paper is right there. That paper is right there. So I have no scraps left over, and I had a lot of fun creating, and I have nothing left over. That's the name of the game. So this is what I do with the flowers that I cut out that it didn't work. Flowers that I kind of experimented with, I put them in a little bag, and those are this set here. So I'm just going to throw them in there, so the next time I pull this out to use it, perhaps I'll find a use for those flowers. And this is where I put my cards. This is my starter cards. I also have napkins for making cards, but mostly this is cards that I may have the front done. I don't have a sentiment on it. There's nothing inside, and so I just usually I do a bunch of a certain type, and I just throw them in here, and they will stay in here until they get used for something. Occasionally I'll pull some out and I'll put some decorations on it. I sort of do a little bit more on them, but usually they have nothing inside, and that way I have ready-made cards that are partially done. Most of them just need a sentiment, and or if I just want to write somebody a note, I have a little note card that I can just grab and write something. I try to keep a variety of male, female cards, and I have some generic cards that don't really have any, you know, specific thing. Sometimes I'll pull out some of my generic cards and add a little decoration, but still I don't have it designated, so it just stays in here until it gets used. And I already know who this is going to be for. I just haven't put the message inside. The front is completely done. Matter of fact, I have two of them. I'm going to go to brothers in the same family. So they're ready. I already know who they're for, so I just haven't finished them. Like this one, I don't have any sentiment at all, but I kind of like to keep this one as an example so that I remember how to make this type of card. One day I made a bunch of this type of cards with the little dresses. So, and I think I've used up most of them. One time I made a bunch of these, and I have used up most of those cards as well. But that's my process, so that I'm ready to give a card for any occasion. Already started, so I don't have to go from the very beginning. So if you liked these ideas, check out my card making videos. I've got lots of videos about using up scraps, and you're sure to find some creative ideas on how to make the most of your papers. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.